Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravachakacharya Statirasata Shriman Jagat Guru Saraswarupananda Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravachakacharya Statirasata Shriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Harirasta Kaur Ki Jai. Prem Chikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganges Mai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur's World Mission Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga, Gaur Premananda, Hari Gaur. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Vitale Srimati Saraswarupananda Paramahamsa Tanani Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pachandra Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pastitya Vishita Om Jnanatammarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militam Jena Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tarati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual masters have opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter at his lotus feet? Haribo, namaste, everyone. So, continuing with the 24th chapter, the 8th canto of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And it's the wonderful pastime of Matsya, the Lord's fish incarnation. And as we discussed last week, or it was revealed last week in the reading, that there were actually two manifestations of the Matsya incarnation. And this is, now we're reading about the second Matsya incarnation, in which Matsya appeared as a blessing to King Satyavrata. And it was quite the humorous pastime, because Satyavrata was a very wonderful devotee of Krishna. Even though he was a very powerful king, in order to maintain his mentality of a servant and as servant of not only the Lord, but of the citizens that he ruled over, he did lots of austerities and penances to try to keep himself humble. And one of those penances was that he would, at times, subsist only on water, wouldn't take any food, he would just drink water. And so he was down at the river doing his meditation, and he had this palm full of water. He looked into his palm full of water, and there was this little fish. And he goes, oh no, a little fish. And so he takes the fish and tosses it back out in the middle of the river. But the, what's that?
It's just Mariah talking to the kids.
Oh, okay.
He'll be done.
But the fish wasn't happy with this. And the fish cried out to him, oh, my dear king, why are you throwing me into this river where there's all these other big fish in a very dangerous place for me? I'm afraid I'm going to get eaten by these other fish. says, I take shelter of you. Please protect me from it, you know. So the king thought this was okay, so why not? So he takes the little fish and he puts him in his little water jug and he takes him home.
But the fish was talking to him.
Yes, the fish was speaking to him. And so then he gets home and within a short time, the fish is talking to him again saying, oh, my dear king, this water pot you've placed me in is not a suitable residence, because he'd gotten so big he could barely even fit inside the water pot. Couldn't even turn around hardly. He says, please give me a more suitable place to live. So the king said, oh, I'm sorry, and he takes him and throws him into this big well. And within a few moments, of course, the fish expanded himself and was too big for the well. So then he has to take him and transfer him to a lake. And then he's too big for the lake, so he has to take him to this big river. And again, the river proves to be too small and too shallow. So finally, the king takes him to the ocean and throws him in the ocean. And again, the fish says, oh, my goodness, you throw him in the ocean. There's so many dangerous creatures in the ocean. I thought you were going to protect me, you know. And by this time, the king's starting to figure things out. And he says, who are you? You must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then the fish says, yeah, you busted me. And explained that he was Matsya. And then said, but in 3 to 4 days, or was it 3 to 7 days, there's going to be this great inundation. He says, and when this inundation happens, he says, I'm going to send you a boat. And then you can get inside this boat, gather up the 7 great rishis, get all the seeds and all the herbs and all the plants, and you will ride out this inundation inside the boat. But you're going to take Vasuki, the great serpent, and you're going to tie the boat to my horn, and I will take care of you during the inundation. So we're going to pick up on text 43. Actually, we'll step back to text 41. Thereafter, gigantic clouds pouring incessant water swelled the ocean more and more. Thus the ocean began to overflow onto the land and inundate the entire world. As Satyavrata remembered the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he saw a boat coming near him. Thus he collected herbs and creepers, and accompanied by saintly Brahmins, he got aboard the boat. The saintly Brahmins, being pleased with the king, said to him, O king, please meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead Keshava. He will save us from this impending danger and arrange for our well-being. Then, while the king constantly meditated upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a large golden fish appeared in the ocean of inundation. The fish had 1 horn and was 8 million miles long. Following the instructions by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the king anchored the boat to the fish's horn, using the serpent Vasuki as a rope. Thus being satisfied, he began offering prayers to the Lord. The king said, by the grace of the Lord, those who have lost their self-knowledge since time immemorial, and who because of this ignorance are involved in a material conditional life full of miseries, obtain the chance to meet the Lord's devotee. I accept that Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Supreme Spiritual Master. Report. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the Supreme Spiritual Master. The Lord knows everything about the suffering of the conditioned soul, and therefore he appears in this material world, sometimes personally, sometimes by an incarnation, and sometimes by authorizing a living entity to act on his behalf. In all cases, however, he is the original spiritual master who enlightens the conditioned souls who are suffering in the material world. The Lord is always busy helping the conditioned souls in many ways. Therefore, he is addressed here as Paramo Gunir Bhavan, the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who acts to spread Krishna consciousness, is also guided by the Supreme Lord to act properly in executing the Lord's order. Such a person may appear to be an ordinary human being, but because he acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Spiritual Master, he is not to be neglected as ordinary. It is therefore said, Acharyam mam vijananyat, an acharya who acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be understood to be as good as the Supreme Lord himself. Shakshadaritvena shamamasta shastya utastatha bhavata eva shavi kintrupa borya priya eva tasya vande guroshri charanaravrindam. Vishwanath Chakravarti has advised that the spiritual master, acting on the Supreme Lord's behalf, must be worshipped as being as good as the Supreme Lord, for he is the Lord's most confidential servant in broadcasting the Lord's message for the benefit of the conditioned souls involved in the material world. This is a very timely verse, considering that we're coming up on the celebration of Vyas Puj, when we celebrate the appearance of our spiritual master. The conditioned soul, under the influence of the modes of material nature, struggles with so many things. Yeah? We see it in our practical lives. There's so many struggles in life. And as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, the foremost enemy of the conditioned soul is the uncontrolled mind. The uncontrolled mind is always offering advice, always offering direction, always trying to take the place, or the position rather, of the spiritual master. Right? The spiritual master is the one who can guide us through the perplexities of life. The spiritual master is the one who can help us understand our actual goal, who can actually help us keep our perspective. Once we've understood this goal, we can arrange our life in such a way that we maintain our perspective and don't get sidetracked by all the different calamities that befall us living out this life that we've foolishly agreed to take on. Not just agreed to take on, we wanted to take on. We insisted upon it. We insist upon it by insisting on having our independence from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, insisting that we don't need anyone else, that we are smart enough and clever enough and determined enough and whatever else to take care of ourselves. We know it's good for us. But Krishna, knowing better, sends us his representative in the form of his wonderful scripture, the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Brahma Samhita, the Puranas, the Upanishads, and as his living representative, the spiritual masters coming in disciplic succession. Text 47. In hopes of becoming happy in this material world, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities that result only in suffering. But By rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from such false desires for happiness. May my Supreme Spiritual Master cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. Purport. For material happiness, the conditioned soul involves himself in fruitive activities, which actually put him into material distress. Because the conditioned soul does not know this, he is said to be in avidya, or ignorance. Because of a false hope for happiness, the conditioned soul becomes involved in various plans for material activity. Here, Maharaj Satyavrata prays that the Lord sever this hard knot of false happiness and thus become his Supreme Spiritual Master. And unfortunately, we've all seen this, both in our own lives and the lives of our relatives and our friends and our neighbors. Maya proposes so many recipes for happiness in this material world. The mind says, yes, that sounds like a good plan. Let's do that. And you're off to the races. But inevitably, the plans fail us. And our desires for happiness are frustrated. Even if everything goes perfectly according to plan, and we get all the things that we were trying to get in this endeavor, we find there's no actual satisfaction there in that happiness, so-called happiness. Right? Every morning we make breakfast for Krishna, and he's going to spend the day out in the forest herding the cows, so we make a little snack for him to take along, you know, and we call it our snack pack. So we get some mixed nuts and we take them and we roast them in a pan with maple syrup till the maple syrup crystallizes around the nuts to make a nice, you know, sweet little treat. And then we get some various things like dried mango and crystallized ginger and some dates, and we put some cream cheese and some roasted almonds on top of that, and we make this little package for him to take to the forest to share with his friends and to snack on before lunch and between meals and stuff. And so we offer that with breakfast every morning, and then after we have our lunch, that's our dessert. And then we have some of that prasadam that's he kindly left behind for us. And it's pretty nice, you know. But after a few years of the same thing, you know, the tongue says, hey, wait a minute, you know, we've been doing this for a while. We need something different, you know. So after I'd had my Maha snack pack that day, and we don't usually eat dinner in our house, so it was getting after the evening Gayatri, and I'm still feeling a little hungry, and I go, I think we need another snack. And I go, I know, we've got some organic vanilla ice cream in the freezer, you know, get some of that. And I'm doing this Bhagavad Gita class for some of the young girls over here, and one of them gave me a present of this caramel, you know, cooked down milk, caramelized stuff. I'll put some of that on it, and made a little offering to Krishna, and this organic vanilla ice cream with this caramel sauce on it. And that's going to be nice, you know. So I have my extra prasadam for the day, and yes, it's very nice as I'm having it. But immediately after it's done, I'm thinking, I can do a couple more of those. You know, that wasn't, you know, because I just have like a couple of tablespoons because it's late at night, right? I don't want to eat too much. And I go, you know, but then I realize, you know, there's no satisfaction there, even though it's prasadam and everything else. You know, you're trying to get the happiness from that tongue flash. And yes, maybe it lasts for a minute or two while you're actually honoring the prasadam or whatever. But then it's gone, you know, and then Then you got to deal with the fact that you had frozen milk product, right? Not that long before you go to bed, and how that affects your sleep and everything else. And oh my goodness, my plan for sense gratification has backfired again. And here I'm still unsatisfied, and now I'm not going to sleep as well. And one thing after another. So even when our plans are successful, and even when we take them and try to somehow dress them up and as service to Krishna, trying to satisfy the tongue is service to Krishna somehow, we find that unless it's actual devotional service, where we're actually doing it for the satisfaction of Krishna, there's no real satisfaction there. It backfires on us every time. And that's why in this verse, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities that result only in suffering. Text 48. One who wants to be free of material entanglement should take to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give up the contamination of ignorance involving pious and impious activities. Thus, one regains his original identity, just as a block of gold or silver sheds all dirt and becomes purified when treated with fire. May that inexhaustible Supreme Personality of Godhead become our spiritual master, for he is the original spiritual master of all other spiritual masters. Purport. In the human life, one is meant to undergo austerity to purify one's existence. Tapo divyam puktatra yena sattvam surayet. Because of contamination by the modes of material nature, one continues in the cycle of birth and death. Karanam guna sango shad ashat yoni janmashu. Therefore, the purpose of human life is to purify oneself of this contamination so that one can regain his spiritual form and not undergo this cycle of birth and death. The recommended process of decontamination is devotional service to the Lord. There are various processes for self-realization, such as karma, jnana, and yoga, but none of them is equal to the process of devotional service. As gold and silver can be freed from all dirty contamination by being put into a fire, but not merely by being washed. The living entity can be awakened to his own identity by performing devotional service, yat savaya, but not by karma, jnana, or yoga. Cultivation of speculative knowledge or practice of yogic gymnastics will not be helpful. That's a nice analogy, yeah? As gold and silver can be freed from all dirty contamination by being put into fire, but not merely by being washed, the living entity can be awakened to his own identity by performing devotional service, but not by karma, jnana, or yoga. As conditioned souls, we have a tendency to desire a comfortable life, right? We try to make all kinds of arrangements so we have a comfortable life. We get a house in a nice neighborhood if we can, put some nice furniture in it, hopefully pick a place that doesn't have crazy neighbors that disturb us at hours when we're trying to rest, chant, or sleep, and this or that. Get some nice furniture and put it in there. Try to make ourselves comfortable so that we can not be disturbed as we perform our devotional service. But oftentimes, we're simply cheating ourselves. Usually the conditioned soul requires the fire of distress to fully take shelter of Krishna, right? Look at the example of Arjuna on the battlefield at Kurukshetra. All the things that Krishna put the Pandavas through, culminating in the battle of Kurukshetra, to bring Arjuna to that point of fully surrendering. Fully surrendering. Not just taking shelter, but fully surrendering, realizing he's got nothing. And even that was a process, right? He says, I'm a soul surrendered unto you. O Govinda, I shall not fight. Still, he's thinking, yeah, I'm surrendered, but I've got my will still. I still know what's good for me in this regard. I'm not a total imbecile here, Krishna. But no, even then, Krishna keeps pushing him. He says, yeah, you're right. Whatever you say. By the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, okay, you've heard this. Now, deliberate on it fully and decide what you want to do. Because it's always our choice. But the point being is that and his mother Kunti, when she got the chance to see Krishna after all the different calamities, she prayed to him, oh Krishna, may these calamities come again and again. Because only when we're faced with these calamities do we fully take shelter of your lotus feet. Do we ever fully remember you and realize our actual position of being totally dependent on your mercy. So when we're sitting comfortably in our house and everything's nice and calm, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but don't get upset if Krishna arranges for some little wrinkles, yeah, to kind of stir things up a little bit. Turn up the temperature on the stove a little bit there. I mean, there's so many things like that, right? If you want to make ghee, what do? You have to take the butter, you got to put it in the pan, you got to bring it to a boil, you got to sit there and you got to cook it, you got to stir it gently, and when you do that, what happens?
All the solids come up to the top.
Then some come to the top, some sink down to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to scoop off the ones off the top, and you got to then pour the ghee off, leaving the stuff in the bottom, separate it all out. It's a heavy process, man. You're sitting there, but that's the result. It's very similar to the example he's giving with the gold and the silver. It takes that very traumatic, dynamic thing to really get the desired result. And so that's why we have death in this material world. Right? We have so many opportunities during our life to surrender to Krishna, use our intelligence, to take the intelligence that our spiritual master is speaking from and teaching us from. And that's right. There's 3 different ways to learn. The best way to learn is from hearing, but we usually don't do that very well. So just to make sure we have the separation from the body, to give us that final kick in the butt to make that choice, I want to surrender. I know I've spoken about this all the time, but you guys ever watched the Rocky and Bullwinkle show when you were kids? Rocky and Bullwinkle. Remember the Rocky and Bullwinkle show, Aaron?
Yeah, I've seen it just a little bit.
Yeah, Rocky the flying squirrel, and Bullwinkle was this moose that was his friend. But within this cartoon show, they had this segment was called Mr. Wizard. And Mr. Wizard had the ability to shapeshift. He could turn people into different things and put them back in time and this and that and give people their wishes. And there was this turtle tutor, the turtle, I think he was, who was always wanting to be this or be that. He was never satisfied with just being his turtle self. So, Mr. Wizard, I want to be this, or Mr. Wizard, I want to be that. And he would, Mr. Wizard would say, are you sure you want to do that? I don't think that sounds like such a good idea. Oh, no, this is really what I want to do. The wizard would cast his incarnation and tap him with his wand, and the turtle would go spinning down this spiral, psychedelic spiral, and he'd become a matador or whatever it was he wanted to do. And then, the next thing you know, he's got this bull charging at him about to, gouge him with his horns. Mr. Wizard, I don't want to be a matador anymore, Mr. Wizard would have to bring him back and, chant a different incantation and bring the guy back. And of course, the turtle said, oh, thank you, Mr. I learned my lesson. Until next week, So I was, back when cartoons actually had a message to them, I guess, It's interesting. But yeah. Continuing with the purport. The word varnam refers to the luster of one's original identity. The original luster of gold or silver is brilliant. Similarly, the original luster of the living being, who is part of the Satchidananda Vigraha, is the luster of Ananda, or pleasure. Anandamaya Bhyasat. Every living entity has the right to become Anandamaya, joyful, because he is part of the Satchidananda Vigraha, Krishna. Why should the living being be put into tribulation because of the dirty contamination by the material modes of nature? The living entity should become purified and regain his swarup, his original identity. This he can do only by devotional service. Therefore, one should adopt the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is described here as Gurur Guna. Sorry, I can't say that. Gurur Guru, the spiritual master of all other spiritual masters. Even though we may not have the fortune to contact the Supreme Lord personally, the Lord's representative is as good as the Lord himself, because such a representative does not say anything unless it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore gives a definition of Guru. Yare Dekya Tare Kara Krishna Upadesha. The bona fide Guru is he who advises his disciples exactly in accordance with the principles spoken by Krishna. The bona fide Guru is he who has accepted Krishna as Guru. This is Guru Parampara system. The original Guru is Vasudeva, because he is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, wherein everything spoken relates to Krishna. Therefore, Guru Puj is known as Vyas Puj. In the final analysis, the original Guru is Krishna. His disciple is Narada, whose disciple is Vyas, and in this way, we gradually come in touch with the Guru Parampara. One cannot become a guru if he does not know what the personality of Godhead Krishna or his incarnation wants. The mission of the guru is the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Srila Prabhupada was speaking to Acharyadas once. Acharyadas had accepted a service from Srila Prabhupada. It was a very difficult service. The service involved trying to help 3 or 4, 6 or 7 young disciples to remain focused on their service. And not just focused, but motivated and da-da-da-da, He was kind of the manager of this project. And the expression herding cats? You know, cats are impossible to coordinate, right? One's going every which way. So he was getting a bit frustrated with this project. He was feeling that it wasn't going well, and he just got to the point where he didn't really want to do it. You know what I mean? So anytime some other opportunity came up to do something else, he would jump at it, right? Oh, I got to go do this for a while, you know. And it's service, right? It's still connected, but it wasn't specifically the service that Prabhupada asked him to do. And so after some time, it started becoming evident that things weren't going as well as they were hoped to be going. And so Prabhupada called the Charyadas and says, what's, you know, to his place, and what's going on with this thing, you know? And Charyadas kind of confessed that he was feeling frustrated and was, you know, losing his motivation and not feeling that, you know, into it, you know, as he should. And Srila Prabhupada explained to him at that point, he said, spiritual life is very simple. He said, all you have to do is find out what's important to your spiritual master and make that important to you. And then it all becomes very easy, very simple. Right? And this is what Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is referring to here. You have to know what the mission of the spiritual master is. And the mission of the spiritual master is the same as the mission of Krishna, and that's to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And so if we can simply have the intelligence and the determination and the perspective to also link ourselves up. That's what yoga means, right? To link oneself up with the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We'll find that our spiritual life becomes very simple and very sublime. Text 49. Neither all the demigods, nor the so-called gurus, nor other people, either independently or together, can offer mercy that equals even 1/10,000th of yours. Therefore, I wish to take shelter of your lotus feet. Purport. It is said, Kamaistaisthyar Hritagyana Prapadyante Jnana Devataha. People in general, being motivated by material desires, worship the demigods to get fruitive results very quickly. People generally do not become devotees of Lord Vishnu, since Lord Vishnu never becomes the order supplier of his devotee. Lord Vishnu does not give a devotee benedictions that will create a further demand for benedictions. By worshiping the demigods, one may get results, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Antatat tu phalam te sham tat bhavate apa madhesham. Whatever great benedictions one may achieve from the demigods are all temporary. Because the demigods themselves are temporary, their benedictions are also temporary and have no permanent value. Those who aspire for such benedictions have a poor fund of knowledge. Tad bhavate apa madhesham. The benedictions of Lord Vishnu are different. By the mercy of Lord Vishnu, one can be completely freed from material contamination and go back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, the benedictions offered by the demigods cannot compare even to 1/10,000th of the Lord's benedictions. One should not, therefore, try to obtain benedictions from the demigods or false gurus. One should aspire only for the benediction offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:66. Sarva dharmam parityajya mamikam sharanam praja. Aham tvam sarva prabhavyo moksha yashyami masucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. This is the greatest benediction. You ever notice how often our friends come up and they might tell us about some difficult situation they're going through? And it always seems easy to know what someone else should do, right? We always have advice. Oh, yeah, you should do this, right? Very simple. You just got to do this and do that, and everything will be fine. But when it comes to our own life, right? When we're clouded by our own desires and our own aspirations get mixed in there, and our own whatevers, it becomes very difficult to know what to do. We think, oh, it's different in this circumstance, right? A spiritual master has given instructions on this very thing a number of times, right? We've read about it in the scripture, but somehow or another our circumstances are different. And this doesn't, quite apply to me. And I need, direct guidance on this one. But it's, that's all the tricks of Maya. One simply has to act on the instructions that Krishna has already given us. Because these other instructions that come from these other so-called gurus, not even 1/10,000th of the value of the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master. Text 50. As a blind man, being unable to see, accepts another blind man as his leader, people who do not know the goal of life accept someone as a guru who is a rascal and a fool. But we are interested in self-realization. Therefore, we accept you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as our spiritual master. For you are able to see in all directions and are omniscient like the sun. Purport. The conditioned soul, being wrapped in ignorance and therefore not knowing the goal of life, accepts a guru who can juggle words and make some display of magic that is wonderful to a fool. Sometimes a foolish person accepts someone as a guru because he can manufacture a small quantity of gold by mystic yogic power. Because such a disciple has a poor fund of knowledge, he cannot judge whether the manufacture of gold is the criteria for a guru. Why should one not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, from whom unlimited numbers of gold mines are being come into being? Aham sarvasya prabhavu mata saram pravartate. All the gold mines are created by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, why should one accept a magician who can manufacture only a small portion of gold? Such gurus are accepted by those who are blind, not knowing the goal of life. Maharaj Satyavrata, however, knew the goal of life. He knew the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he accepted the Lord as his guru. Either the Supreme Lord or his representative can become guru. The Lord says, Mam eva ye prapadyante, mayam itam tarantite. One can get relief from the clutches of Maya as soon as one surrenders unto me. Therefore, it is the Guru's business to instruct his disciple to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he wants relief from the material clutches. This is the symptom of a guru. This same principle was instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yare deka tare kaha Krishna upadesha. In other words, one is advised not to accept a guru who does not follow the path of instruction given by Lord Krishna. '51. A materialistic so-called guru instructs his materialistic disciples about economic development and sense gratification. And because of such instructions, the foolish disciples continue in the materialistic existence of ignorance. But your lordship gives knowledge that is eternal, and the intelligent person, receiving such knowledge, is quickly situated in his original constitutional position. Purport. The so-called gurus instruct their disciples for the sake of material profit. Some guru advises that one meditate in such a way that his intelligence will increase in regard to keeping his body fit for sense gratification. Another guru advises that sex is the ultimate goal of life, and that one should therefore engage in sex to the best of his ability. These are the instructions of foolish gurus. In other words, because of the instructions of a foolish guru, one remains perpetually in material existence and suffers its tribulations. But if one is intelligent enough to take instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita or the Sankhya philosophy of Kapila Dev, one can very soon attain liberation and be situated in his original position of spiritual life. The words Nijam Padam are significant. The living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has the birthright to a position in Vaikuntha Loka, or the spiritual world, where there is no anxiety. Therefore, one should follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam iti sarjana. After giving up one's body, one will return back home, back to Godhead. The Lord lives in the spiritual world in his original personality, and a devotee who follows the instructions of the Lord approaches him, mam iti. As a spiritual person, such a devotee returns to the personality of Godhead and plays and dances with him. That is the ultimate goal of life. Reminds you of that nice song that Krishna Kathadas wrote for Jesus Christ, right? The message he gives, so simple, so clear. It's all very simple and clear till we muck it up due to our contaminated material desires. As a spiritual person, such a devotee returns to the personality of Godhead and plays and dances with him. That is the ultimate goal of life. Not a bad destination, yeah? Dancing and playing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Krishna Loka, along the banks of the Jamuna River, Govardhan Hill, Shamakund and Radhakund, the Talavan Forest, minus the Nukasura. Not a bad place to hang out for a while. Maybe eternity, yeah. Text 52. My Lord, you are the supreme well-wishing friend of everyone, the dearmost friend, the controller, the supersoul, the supreme instructor, and the giver of supreme knowledge and the fulfillment of all desires. But although you are within the heart, the foolish, because of lusty desires in the heart, cannot understand you. Purport. Herein, the reason for foolishness is described. Because the conditioned soul in this material world is full of materialistic lusty desires, he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although the Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshri arjuna chishtati. It is because of this foolishness that one cannot take instructions from the Lord, although the Lord is ready to instruct everyone, both externally and internally. The Lord says, Dadami buddhi yogaram tam yena mayam, yena mam upanyante. In other words, the Lord can give instructions on devotional service by which one can return home back to Godhead. Unfortunately, however, people do not take this devotional service. The Lord, being situated in everyone's heart, can give one complete instructions on going back to Godhead. But because of lusty desires, one engages himself in materialistic activities and does not render service to the Lord. Therefore, one is bereft of the value of the Lord's instructions. By mental speculation, one can understand that one is not the body but a spirit soul. But unless one engages in devotional service, the real purpose of life is never fulfilled. The real purpose of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and to live with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, play with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, dance with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and eat with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are different items of Ananda, spiritual happiness and spiritual variegatedness. Even though one may come to the platform of Brahma-bhuta and understand his spiritual identity by speculative knowledge, one cannot enjoy spiritual life without understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is indicated here by the word abhishta siddhi. One can fulfill the ultimate goal of life only by engaging in devotional service to the Lord. Then the Lord will give one proper instructions on how to go back home, back to Godhead. By mental speculation, one can understand that one is not the body but a spirit soul. But unless one engages in devotional service, the real purpose of life is never fulfilled. So we hear from the spiritual master, you're not the body, you're spirit soul. You're the eternal servant of Krishna, right? We've all heard this so many times in so many different formats and ways. But unless we actually act on those instructions and factually engage in devotional service, we will never really understand. We'll never really realize the benefit of those instructions. So this needs to be our goal and our constant prayer. My dear Lord, even though I'm so fallen and so foolish that I have no desire to actually engage in your devotional service, that I get distracted by all these lusty desires within my heart, and I take the opportunities that are given to me and squander them, that you have mercy on such a foolish soul as myself, and somehow or another inspire me from within to take advantage of this invitation to engage in your loving devotional service. 53. O Supreme Lord, for self-realization, I surrender unto you, who are worshipped by the demigods as the supreme controller of everything. By your instructions, exposing one's purpose, kindly cut the knot from the core of my heart and let me know the destination of my life. Purport. Sometimes it is argued that people do not know who is a spiritual master, and that finding a spiritual master from whom to get enlightenment in regard to the destination of life is very difficult. To answer all these questions, King Satyavrata shows us the way to accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the real spiritual master. The Supreme Lord has given full directions in Bhagavad Gita, how to deal with everything in this material world and how to return home back to Godhead. Therefore, one should not be misled by so-called gurus who are rascals and fools. Rather, one should directly see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the guru or instructor. It is difficult, however, to understand Bhagavad Gita without the help of the guru. Therefore, the guru appears in the Parampara system. In Bhagavad Gita 4:34, the Personality of Godhead recommends Tad Viripanatpatena Pariprashena Sevaya Upadekshanti Te Jatman Jnanasnas Tattva Darshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Lord Krishna directly instructed Arjuna. Arjuna is therefore Tattvadarshi, or Guru. Arjuna accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Param Brahma, Param Dharma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. Similarly, following in the footsteps of Sri Arjuna, who is a personal devotee of the Lord, one should accept the supremacy of Lord Krishna as supported by Vyas, Devala, Asita, Narada, and later by the Acharyas, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkracharya, and Vishnu Swami, and still later by the greatest Acharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Where then is the difficulty in finding a guru? If one is sincere, he can find the guru and learn everything. One should take lessons from the guru and find out the goal of life. Maharaj Satyavrata, therefore, shows us the way of the Mahajan. Mahajano yena gata sa prata. One should surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Dashavatara, and learn from him about the spiritual world and the goal of life. Piece of cake, right?
Oh.
Text 54. Sukadeva Goswami continued, when Satyavrata had thus prayed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had assumed the form of a fish, the Lord, while moving in the water of inundation, explained to him the absolute truth. The Supreme Personality of Godhead thus explained to King Satyavrata the spiritual science known as Sankhya Yoga, the science by which one distinguishes between matter and spirit, in other words, Bhakti Yoga, along with the instructions contained in the Puranas, the old histories, and the Samhitas. The Lord explained himself in all these literatures. While sitting in the boat, King Satyavrata, accompanied by the great saintly persons, listened to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in regard to self-realization. These instructions were all from the eternal Vedic literature, Brahma. Thus, the king and the sages had no doubt about the absolute truth. At the end of the last inundation, during the period of Swayambhuva Manu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead killed the demon named Hayagriva and delivered all the Vedic literatures to Lord Brahma when Lord Brahma awakened from sleeping. King Satyavrata was illuminated with all the Vedic knowledge by the mercy of Lord Vishnu, and in this period he has now taken birth as Vaivashvata Manu, the son of the sun god. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives his verdict that Satyavrata appeared in the Chakshusha Manvantara. When the Chakshusha Manvantara ended, the period of Vaivashvata Manu began. By the grace of Lord Vishnu, Satyavrata received instructions from the second fish incarnation and was thus enlightened in all spiritual knowledge. Started the parampara all over again, directly from Matsya. Text 59. This story concerning the great king Satyavrata and the fish incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is a great transcendental narration. Anyone who hears it is delivered from the reactions of sinful life. One who narrates this description of the Matsya incarnation and King Satyavrata will certainly have all his ambitions fulfilled, and he will undoubtedly return home back to Godhead. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who pretended to be a gigantic fish, who restored the Vedic literature to Lord Brahma when Lord Brahma awakened from sleep, and who explained the essence of Vedic literature to King Satyavrata and the great saintly persons. Report. Here is a summary of Satyavrata's meeting with the fish incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu's purpose was to take back all the Vedic literatures from the demon Hayagriva and restore them to Lord Brahma. Incidentally, by his causeless mercy, the Lord spoke with Satyavrata. The word Satyavratananam is significant because it indicates that those on the level of Satyavrata can take knowledge from the Vedas delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whatever is spoken by the Supreme Lord is accepted as Veda. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta Krit Vedavit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the compiler of all Vedic knowledge, and he knows the purport of the Vedas. Therefore, anyone who takes knowledge from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or from Bhagavad Gita as it is, knows the purpose of the Vedas. Vedaischa savar aham eva vedya. One cannot understand Vedic knowledge from the Vedavadaratis, who read the Vedas and misconstrue their subject matter. One has to know the Vedas from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 8th Canto, 24th chapter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam entitled Matsya, the Lord's Fish Incarnation. And a little footnote. This commentation has been finished in our New Delhi Center today, the 1st of September, 1976, the day of Radhastami, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Acharyas. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Tandera Varana Seva Bhakta Sane Vasha Janme Haya E Abhilasha. I am attempting to present Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in the English language by the order of my spiritual master, Śrīmad Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, and by his grace, the work of translation is gradually progressing, and the European and American devotees who have joined the Krishna consciousness movement are helping me considerably. Thus, we have expectations of finishing the great task before my passing away. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. End of the 8th canto. Haribol. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be one who narrates this description of Matsya incarnation. I will certainly have all my ambitions fulfilled. Now I just need to purify my ambitions so I don't get myself in trouble, right? Be careful what you wish for. That's the hard part. That's where the rubber meets the road, yeah? Oh, Krishna. Anyone have any comments they'd like to offer? Or?
Can I ask a quick question, please?
Sure.
This pastime happened in this planet Earth or in this universe?
That happened on this planet Earth?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I got the impression from reading it that this inundation affected all the planets, not just the earthly planets. It didn't say it specifically, but just like Swayambhuva Manu, right? Where does he hang out? I don't remember. I think we read it back in the 4th canto. But I don't remember what planet that he and Devahudi live on. I mean, not Devahudi. What was Swayambhuva Manu's wife's name? I can't remember. But they had the daughters, and they gave the daughters to Kardama Muni. And Kardama Muni, with Devahudi, had Kapila Dev, who spoke Sankhya philosophy, and that was in the 4th canto, wasn't it? Anyway.
Sounds right. Not sure.
4th or 6th, I don't remember. Anyway, it's been quite the journey. I was thinking that we, at some point, it'd be interesting just to kind of go back and just read through all the at least the titles of the chapters up until this point, just to kind of refresh our memories on all that's taken place in the Bhagavatam up to this point.
I like that idea.
Yeah? Okay, maybe we'll do that next week. We got Vyas Puj coming up.
What about that one book? It was like the summary of the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, I've got that around somewhere. I'll take a look at that, see if that's might be an appropriate way to do it. Just to kind of, get our perspective back on where we are. But I really enjoyed the story of Matsya, where he's playing with Satyavrata and, I'm just this tiny little fish. Don't throw me in the river. I'll get eaten by the big fish. Oh, sir, you said you were going to help me, but this jar is way too small. I need a better house. Satyavrata never lost his patience. Never, okay, here we go. Try this. I can't imagine the logistics of transporting a fish that was too large to live in the largest river to the ocean. I mean, can you imagine? It must be quite the feat. I don't even know where you'd start. Because after he got in the ocean, he became, yeah, now there's a clue right there. Matsya was 8 million miles long, right? And
Yeah.
he's
That's
not going to fit on the Earth planet.
larger than the diameter of Earth.
Yeah,
But
so,
that wasn't until he got in the ocean of inundation, which
yeah.
is
But he had to get in the ocean of inundation unless he started. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
I got the idea that they put him in the Earth's ocean, and then the inundation started happening, and so then he could move into that, which is
Yeah.
bigger than all the planets.
He was on some planet, whether it was the Earth or one of the higher planetary systems. I don't know. I mean, he talks about the demigods, so he wasn't in a demigod body, right? He's still a middle planetary system somewhere. So it could have well been the Earth.
Oh,
All right, so we'll chant for a couple of minutes. Thank you so much.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna. My guitar is being resurrected. I broke it, remember? So I got my backup guitar here. But I'm so spoiled for the last 20 years. The pick guard was loose on my guitar, so I just take the pick and stick it up under the pick guard. So I always had the pick right where I needed it. This thing doesn't have any place to put the picks. I'm always losing the pick.
This is what I use. It's you can buy these. They're real cheap. It's a pick holder.
Oh, okay.
You just get double-sided tape and you stick it on your guitar, and then you always have a place to put your picks.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to make it down to a music store somewhere and find one of those. It's probably on Amazon too, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. These days, yep.
Namasara Sarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gurakaruna Swaripaya Radha Krishna Krishna Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharane Nivasesha Sunyavadi Astutyam Vishatarane Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Bhaktivedanta Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna. Jaya Jaya Vallabha. Shri Govinda Gopinath. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Haribo.
Haribo.